Welcome to the Afternoon Sports Drive on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network.
Let's do this thing.
It's just two guys talking sports, and we actually pay them to do it.
You volunteered, didn't you? We're paying you, aren't we?
The first of the duo is an opinionated local sports editor who has made a name for himself thanks to his beard.
That's a serious beard you got going on. I mean, you're heading toward Doug Dynasty, but well-groomed. That's a good look. If I ever did that, that's the look I would go for.
The other guy is a guy who takes no prisoners when it comes to sports.
Let's stomp these dudes.
Together, they bring you the best in Oklahoma State sports talk and opinions on sports from around the country.
That's right. Listen up. Hey, listen up. You.
It's Jason Elmquist.
A day, I'm a mild-mannered reporter for the newspaper.
And Patrick Wheeler.
I'm a very dangerous man.
This is the Afternoon Sports Drive on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network.
That's what I'm talking about. Sport.
You ain't never heard nothing like this. Let me work, show me where the mic is. I'm on stage, black shirt and my Timbs. You know how I do it, I ain't playing with you, I've been grinding. Anybody trying to sleep on me, better do something with your eyelids. I hear a lot of whining, but I don't hear a lot of rhyming. Whoa. Everybody got opinions, let it go into my ear, then I block that. Put me on stage, I'm a rock that.
Welcome into the Afternoon Sports Drive here on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Patrick Wheeler with you. Tom Dorado is going to be in studio as well here very shortly. Believe Jason Elmquist was going to join us at some point here. I know he was busy with the press conference that was going on regarding Oklahoma State basketball. Yes, that is the unfortunate bombshell that was dropped today. Everyone's listened to this station all day, has heard it earlier this morning. Early this afternoon, I guess, is when it was. That Oklahoma State basketball has received penalties regarding incidents that happened back in 2017. Here on the Afternoon Sports Drive, we're batting cleanup as always, and we're going to come through with as much information as we can on it and give everybody a chance to voice their opinion as well later on in the show. We plan on having the phone lines obviously will be open for the most part, and we'll make sure everybody can chime in when they want to. At 3:05-ish or so, I think we plan on having Kyle Boone, CBS Sports, on with us. He'll give his take, and then obviously there's not a much better a person you can get than Tom Dorado to talk about all this as well. This has been obviously a wrecker here in Stillwater, nationally as well. The punishments that were handed down for what occurred at Oklahoma State, the type of punishment is the problem here, okay? And that's what we're going to get into. It has, and not to make things worse, but with the team that Oklahoma State was going to put out on that court this season. Level 1 violation that occurred back in 2017, former associate head coach Lamont Evans. He was sentenced back in June 2019, 3 months in prison is what he got. He accepted between $18,150 to $22,000 in bribes to steer players from South Carolina and Oklahoma State to certain agents and financial advisors. Evans was hit with a 10-year showcase penalty as well. So 3 years into quote-unquote investigation here into these allegations has resulted in a 3-year probation period for Oklahoma State basketball, and the biggest one, a 1-year postseason ban for this upcoming season. Oklahoma State will appeal immediately. They will do that very, very soon. Their official statement is as follows. The Oklahoma State University Department of Athletics will file an immediate appeal of the NCAA penalties assessed to the men's basketball program on Friday. The deadline for filing the appeal is June 20th. So obviously that's going to be done, like I said, immediately. It's going to be heard by the infractions appeal committees, and the final step is the NCAA infractions process. The university is stunned by the severity of the penalties and strongly disagrees with them. The penalties do not align with the facts and are unfair and unjust. The NCAA agreed with OSU that Lamont Evans acted alone and for his own personal gain. Evans was terminated by OSU on September 28th, 2017, within 72 hours of learning of allegations against him. The NCAA also agreed that OSU did not benefit in recruiting, commit a recruiting violation, did not play an ineligible player, and did not display a lack of institutional control. As the report documents, OSU cooperated throughout the entire process, which lasted, as we talked about, 2 years. The NCAA appears to have made an arbitrary decision, and the sanctions applied to the institution for the egregious actions committed by a former coach that did not result in any benefits for the university. Everybody understands. One of the first tweets I'm looking up here that I have pulled up was of a Mizzou account saying, hey, Mizzou fans feel you on all this as well. Because it does remind me of that. And the way that it reminds me, as I was talking about earlier, was the players involved are not the ones, or the players that are on the team now were not involved at all. And they're the ones getting punished. The NCAA, as we all know, loves to take their sweet time. Loves it. And that's what they're going to do with blue blood schools as well, because everyone's brought up immediately. Well, what about Kansas? Because they're facing 5 level 1 allegations. And all I got to say is if Kansas doesn't receive a much worse punishment than what Oklahoma State got, if they're found guilty as well, then we have a real problem. We have a real problem. LSU's been put on notice. I know that was also supposed to be one of the schools that was going to get information about allegations too. But for Oklahoma State to be number 1 and immediately targeted and thrown out there as the first school to obtain punishment at this level, it's egregious. It really is. This has been, I've seen a lot of issues with the NCAA regarding punishments before, but with no proof that head coach Mike Boynton or Mike Holder were a part of this situation, for instance, and yet it results in a 1-year postseason ban. That's what blows my mind. If there were proof that those two were involved, you might say, okay, well, that makes a little bit more sense. But for it to be agreed upon that it was one coach and all that money went straight into his pocket and didn't help out Oklahoma State in any way, that's where you're like, just don't understand that punishment. Oh, well, what's the vendetta against OSU? Everyone's like, wants to talk about this burning question. This is the next topic we'll get into. Is, of course, it would be this year when Oklahoma State has a recruiting class of historic proportions coming in, and Cade Cunningham, the best player in the country, coming in. And they're told, well, it's basically all for nothing. Because what is the goal of every single season in college basketball? That's to make it into the postseason. Every single time. There's nothing else. Nothing else but that. That's the main focus. And now it's not possible. Now, the appeal is going to be put out there, as we said. I'm going to get Tom's opinion on the appeal. I'm being completely honest here, I'm not super confident. I mean, if everything were fair, this appeal would go through and it would be victorious. But I'm not confident because I know how the NCAA works. It is going to be within 110 days that the appeal will be heard. And we determined that was in, I think, second week of September somewhere. So that timeline is not good. The NCAA, again, I have to believe they would take their sweet time with that. So that's where we are. Believe we've got Kyle Boone on the line now. We'll get him in here. Make sure this is him. Hey, Kyle. Boone. Hey, how's it going, man?
Good. How are you?
We're dousing some fires around here.
Yeah, today's been hectic.
It has been. I know that it has been for you as well. Kyle Boone here with the CBS Sports, joining the afternoon sports drive. And what the ironic part about this for me is, I had actually remember reading about the I guess it was the article you wrote regarding the NBA scout that told you about Cade Cunningham, right, being the could be the first pick in this year's draft. Mm-hmm. And I had actually put that in the sports report on the station. I thought, that's pretty strong opinion right there, and it's probably validated in some ways. And then, of course, this drops today. Can you believe the irony of that?
Yeah, it's pretty wild. The guy that I talked to was probably a little bit higher than most on Cade Cunningham, but that also speaks maybe to the weakness of the 2020 NBA draft as opposed to 2021. But either way, you're talking about Cade Cunningham, a 5-star recruit, 6'6" point guard who plays both ends of the floor, and he's just a transcendent talent. I don't think there's any debate about that. And so, now you get the NCAA allegations and the official punishment handed out today. It puts that all in peril. I think you're talking about 2 weeks ago an Oklahoma State program that feels really good about its future, that feels that, even with the NCAA cloud hanging over its head, that, this was going to be like minor recruiting sanctions of some sort. That's what OSU people really thought.
Yeah.
And a postseason ban it broadsided just about everyone inside the program.
What was your initial response and thought to it when you saw that it was going to result in a postseason ban, and then obviously the loss of scholarships as well?
I was surprised. I was really surprised just because you look at some of the other programs that have become ensnared in the FBI scandal into corruption and bribery from a few years ago. Oklahoma State's not the only big-time program. In fact, Kansas is involved in this. Louisville is involved in this. Arizona is involved in this. And of those that I just listed, there are many more, but of those that I just listed, OSU by far committed the least amount of egregious acts. They only had one level 1 violation. It was from a former staffer who was reprimanded, and they ended up firing him. And so you look at, the one level 1 violation from Oklahoma State as opposed to Kansas, which has 5. You have to think that, based off of the ruling today, that some of these major programs in college basketball have a real reckoning coming for them. And it'll be interesting to watch because I think based off of the criteria that the NCAA used today, Kansas is facing a multi-year postseason ban. Arizona is probably facing a multi-year postseason ban, and Louisville and several other programs. So, I think that's kind of the gut reaction that I had was, what does it mean for the rest of college basketball if Oklahoma State, who really didn't commit that much, is facing a postseason ban from this?
Kyle Boone from CBS Sports joining us here on the Afternoon Sports Drive. That was my thought, too, was with Kansas, but we all know how some Blue Bloods have been treated in the past when it comes to this type of situation. Would you be surprised to see Kansas come away with maybe an equal or in some ways lesser punishment here?
I would not be surprised, and I'll say it for this reason. Oklahoma State worked hand in hand with NCAA investigators in this case. They admitted that, yes, there was some egregious acts committed by Lamont Evans. They fessed up to that act. Once they found out it actually happened, they were very forthcoming with the process. You look at Kansas, the 5 level 1 allegations that they've alleged Kansas committed, Kansas is denying. And so far throughout history in the NCAA process, denying that you've committed anything has actually worked out pretty well for the school that is in question. We saw with the North Carolina academic scandal that spanned for years and years and years, and finally just basically nothing came of it. So, I think there's a chance that despite Kansas clearly committing way more violations from higher up, Kansas could end up getting off the hook with a similar punishment.
Hey, Kyle, Tom Dorado here, and I something the way things, the old saying, the more they change, they're really the same. Mm-hmm. I was somewhat amused is not the word, but you fill in the blank. But when it was brought up that we cooperated and we did everything, I remember back in the '88 because I was in the department then, and there was some division amongst the department people. How much should we help the NCAA?
Yeah,
and I'll have to raise my hand. I was against helping. My stance was, hell, if you think you got something on us, come find it yourself. I'm not gonna bring you a file and let you work off that file. Well, I got outvoted, and obviously we cooperated, but it really did not soften the blow. If you go back to what happened, it almost wrecked our football program back then. I find it somewhat interesting that all these years later, that still came up in the discussion in the conference. We cooperated, but sometimes that doesn't happen. It really doesn't help you.
Yeah, and we heard from Mike Holder and Mike Boynton today. They had a press conference with the media about an hour and a half ago, and they mentioned that. They said, they tried to be forthcoming. They felt that they handled the situation with as much integrity as possible. They feel like they did the right thing. They cooperated. And technically, according to the NCAA bylaws, they're obligated to help, but there's a lot of programs that decide they don't want to help for that reason.
Mm-hmm.
And so they felt like, they were going to end up kind of getting some leniency in this case because they were so forthcoming and they made clear that, we're going to help you every step of the way to get as much information to you as possible. It ends up biting them in the butt. And maybe they go and revisit this in a few years and they have a similar case, they'll take a different approach. But, yeah, you mentioned it. Just like back in the day, it again kind of came back to bite them. And I have to wonder if maybe they regret even helping the NCAA at all. And
the other thing I was going to bring up that seems to come back around, too, the thing about an NCAA investigation, and I was part of two of them when I worked in the department, is the collateral damage, if you will. It's the fact that your name is on that ESPN crawl all day long. And they don't go into a whole lot of detail. Oklahoma State gets postseason ban, on probation, scholarship law, and they just go on. They keep running that crawl. That hurts you, number one. The other thing is, the good news is you can appeal. The bad news is that appeal may not be heard for months, and you live in a what's going to happen world. And the people that you're dealing with, recruits, fans, are asking questions you have an answer to. And, Coach, am I going to play? We're not going to play? Well, I don't know. We're waiting on the appeal. They don't have to answer the appeal 24 hours after you file it. And they've got a lot of appeals. I would think Kansas is taking a lot of their time with the things that are going on there. So you could get into a collateral damage thing on an appeal where it hangs over your head for months and months and months before it's ever resolved.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And the collateral damage in this case is pretty widespread. You look at the incoming recruits, the signees, the future recruits that Mike Boynton is going to try and recruit to Oklahoma State, the current players knowing that going into next season they won't have a postseason to play for. And he's going to have to overcome a lot of obstacles on the recruiting trail because on top of all that cloud that he'll have to deal with, many other programs are going to use this as a weapon to recruit against Oklahoma State. And I think it's going to be really hard to overcome. Boynton today on the call said that, the players that he talked to, including Cade Cunningham, the 5-star recruit who's coming to Oklahoma State, was confused and concerned was the words he used. And I think that's probably right just because, I think from everyone I've talked to at Oklahoma State, they really did not expect this to be the case. This was the absolute worst case scenario. And so dealing with the fallout of this is not going to be just a one-day thing. They have to deal with the appeal. They have to deal with the recruits, the players, the coaches, the signees, all of that. And it's going to be a massive headache for the Oklahoma State Athletic Department to deal with.
Kyle Boone from CBS Sports joining the afternoon sports drive here. Okay, be honest with me. What's your thought on what happens with Cade? I mean, does he stick around? Does he explore other options?
I think he will look at other options. As of right now, I haven't got to talk with him or anyone in his circle, so I can't say with certainty. If I were guessing right now, I'm guessing he comes to Oklahoma State and stays put. I don't think the G League is a real option at this point, although I think if the G League wanted him and he wanted to go there, they could make that happen. But at this point, I think his brothers at Oklahoma State, he's got a really tight bond with Mike Boynton. I still feel like Oklahoma State has a decent shot, and maybe the appeal actually works. What if, Tom mentioned that you don't get the appeal overnight, but what happens if they turn it around real quickly and suddenly Oklahoma State's eligible for the postseason, or they have to serve the suspension in 2022? That is certainly a scenario, and I don't think anyone wants to make any gut reaction to this news and have players transfer just knowing that the postseason is out of play for next season. But let's wait and see kind of how this plays out, and hopefully for Oklahoma State's sake, they can at least serve this a year later, or have it completely wiped from the record, because I think it's a little bit of an overreach.
Well, and we know how the NCAA has been at times with appeal processes and timing and all of that. That's going to be the next question I know we're going to be asked a ton. I'm going to ask it to you is give your best shot at when you think the NCAA appeals committee is going to come back with a response here.
Yeah, that was the question that was posed to Mike Holder today
Yep.
on the conference call was, because Cade Cunningham is coming, there's kind of a unique situation where Oklahoma State's positioned to win and win pretty big next season. And so because of that, do you hurry up and try and file an appeal and hope that you can get it back in 2 weeks? Or do you drag your feet, file an appeal in 6 months, and hope that by the time the decision comes back, Cade's already off to the NBA and you have to deal with it for another year? That's, I think either approach could be done, and could both be successful. I think Holder kind of spelled it out in the way that he feels that no matter whether Cade was coming or not, that Oklahoma State was wronged in this scenario. They feel that the NCAA got it completely wrong and they overreached with the punishment. And because of that, they're going to work diligently. They're going to file their appeal quickly, and they're going to hope that justice wins out. And I think justice in this case would be removing the postseason ban and allowing OSU to play in the 2021 postseason. But, you never know what the NCAA is going to end up deciding. But it sounds like OSU will end up moving fairly quickly, and I would expect that if they file an appeal in the next couple of days or weeks, that we will actually potentially know their fate before the start of the 2020 season.
You're pretty optimistic, and I like your optimism. I think you've got till June the 20th to get it done, and they're not going to wait that long. But there's no way you can predict what the committee that meets. Their calendars are not like ours. They're not like 6 or 7 people in the same building, and you just say, "Hey, let's go to the conference room and let's have a meeting." Their calendars are such that they may only get together 7 or 8 times a year, maybe 10. So you're kind of working on their calendar. They're not working on yours. And as I said, that's part of the collateral damage. I'm not accusing that committee of doing that, but you live with the doubt. And I will say this, I don't know how much more Oklahoma State can include in the appeal that they didn't include in the final meeting they had in Atlanta in February. Because they went through these same scenarios with the committee there. And they felt good coming home that, they were, I think Smirt said it. Maybe one of the guys said we felt really good coming out of that meeting that we had gotten our points across, and, at the very worst, it was going to be minimal as to what we got. So looking at that, I don't know how much more they can bring to the table other than you gave us too much. It was too heavy. But as far as information that puts Oklahoma State in a better light, I don't know how much more they can bring, because they brought a bunch of big guns in this thing now. I mean, they were at this thing for hot and heavy for about a year and a half to make sure that so it wasn't an overnight thing.
Yeah, and I think they want, for that reason, they didn't want to take any chances. They knew what was at stake. They knew that Cade Cunningham was coming and that Oklahoma State should be really good next season. So you're right, to your point. Maybe I'm a little bit over-optimistic in thinking that they will adjudicate this and do so quickly. But, I think they're going to fight. They're going to fight and hope that justice wins out, that their initial presentation to the committee, to the infractions committee, will resonate a little bit more to the appeals committee. And, it's different people that they're going to be talking to, and hopefully they will see kind of the reasoning for this, because, to go back to what Holder said, they really gained no competitive advantage from this whatsoever. This was a bad actor who acted alone and acted selfishly. And in this case, I think it's fair to argue that Oklahoma State was the victim. So getting the NCAA appeals committee to actually see that standpoint and see Oklahoma State's perspective, I think will be really important to Oklahoma State winning this appeal.
Kyle, did the announcement of all this make you scratch your head at all regarding that it's, 3 years later with this class coming in, or was this just the NCAA finally getting around to finishing this up?
I had expected that it would come at some point. I actually thought it would probably be earlier this spring, like maybe a month or two ago. But, the notice of allegations came in last fall, and typically, it's a 6-month-ish process depending on how the committee is going to act. But yeah, I think today specifically, it took me a little bit by surprise. But timing-wise, I think it was generally what they expected. But the big surprise is obviously just the egregiousness and the severity of the punishment.
Kyle Boone with CBS Sports joining us here on the Afternoon Sports Drive. Last thing for you, one of the things that stood out to me in the conference call was a question was asked to Mike Holder and Coach Boynton, and I think Coach Boynton gave the best answer. It was asked about the hiring process. Does this make you look deeper into the hiring process and who you put on your staff? And Boynton kind of said, well, we did everything we could. We were pretty thorough with it as well. We just you can't find everything all the time with some of these guys individually. Did you like that answer from him?
Yeah, I thought it was good too, because I think that's something that Mike Boynton should have to answer for. This was a guy who he elevated to be essentially his number 2 guy, and the character concerns there really bore themselves out, and he's still paying the price for it 3 years later. So I think it's a valid concern, and maybe Mike Boynton misjudged him, or maybe Mike Boynton kind of got the wool pulled over him. I don't know. I can't say. But, I think that Mike Boynton, for the most part, was kind of just blindsided by all this. And you have to almost feel bad for him, because at every turn throughout his Oklahoma State tenure, he's had some sort of obstacle he's had to overcome, whether it's Lamont Evans getting arrested by the FBI, Brad Underwood just up and leaving for Illinois. One of his best players, Michael Weathers, ended up getting arrested. He's had to deal with so many different things, and it looked like, maybe things were starting to turn around, that Cade Cunningham was coming and he was going to have a great team. And then this happened, and you kind of just have to empathize and almost feel bad for him.
Yeah, no doubt. Kyle, thanks so much for taking some time out of your day and joining us here.
You got it. Thanks, Patrick. Thanks, Tom.
Yes, sir.
Kyle Boone from CBS Sports joining us and discussing the allegations and the punishment now that has taken place here, given to Oklahoma State basketball. And we'll continue talking about that when we come back. I think Jason Elmquist is going to join us here at some point. I know he was busy with the conference call and Perry and everything too, so we'll try to get him on the line and see what he thought about the answers that were given at the conference call, and much more still to come here on the Afternoon Sports Drive on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network.
Yeah, that's what I've been on. Yeah, that's what I've been on. Yeah, that's what I've been on. Yeah, that's what.
Welcome back to the Afternoon Sports Drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Patrick Wheeler and Tom Dorado with you right now as we continue discussing the fallout of the events that have taken place today regarding Oklahoma State basketball. I told Jordan Woodruff, I said, you know what? This has been this past few weeks have just been to Oklahoma State basketball punch in the gut.
Yeah, and the final punch is not there. And we won't know until the appeal is considered, whenever that is. Trying to predict what the appeal will bring is probably futile. Yeah. Because I'll go back to what I was telling Kyle. And this goes back to, I think it was early February. Baseball had just started. And Oklahoma State had met with this committee, or members of the committee in Atlanta, knowing full well that we're gonna go through all the things again that we did not do. All right, and here's the things that you've alleged that we didn't do this. Okay, we had nothing to do with this, and this, and this. So they made a pretty good pitch at the time, but at the same time, obviously that committee or the members of that committee went back and they didn't exactly believe that because they came out 3 or 4 months later and said, here's the deal. Now you can't go to postseason. So there'll be a different appeals group that hears this, but I don't know how much more they can come up with. I mean, they have exhausted every argument, they being Oklahoma State, over the last couple of years that you could possibly do. I know Jason just walked in, but that's why I know a couple of times on the air over the last the last year, I've said this is not over, even though it was quiet. Nobody heard anything. You heard about Arizona, and you heard about Kansas, and I think the natural reaction was, well, we're not hearing anything, so Oklahoma State must be in the clear. But I knew that wasn't the case because there was still phone calls being made. We need this. Send this. We want to check on this. Send this. As long as the NCAA is asking for information, it's not done.
Yeah, well,
okay?
And we know with the NCAA, a lot of things are never actually just gone. I mean, they're going to stick with, especially situations like this. I got to ask you, I mean, how much of an example is the NCAA making out of Oklahoma State?
Well, I don't know that we can jump to that conclusion yet. Let's see what the final rendition is. Obviously, today's punishment would say that they were trying to send a message to some people. Yeah. But keep in mind, this is a result of the federal investigation that went on, all the federal courts, and Evans amongst the others that were sentenced to this and that. His initial sentence was a lot worse than what he ended up getting. And again, I'm not privy to what was brought up to get that reduced. I'm sure there was some give and take, for this information, I don't have to do this. And he did go to jail. But when it first came out, Evans was going to get several years in prison and be deported. Now, when it first came down the pike.
Right.
Now, that might have been the first, craziness of the story. Well, it didn't turn out that way. Now, Evans is the guy that they all circled around. But at the same time, you still have the one thing you cannot get away from. And the one thing you can't get away from is he worked for Oklahoma State University. There was a time, maybe 10 years ago, where a head coach, and head coaches were really good at this in all sports, they would insulate themselves with 3 or 4 or 5 different assistants and say, well, I never saw Jason Elmquist get paid by you. Well, that's true. But that didn't mean that he didn't know Jason Elmquist got paid. Well, you can't do that. You can't use that as an excuse. Well, I didn't know. Because then the next thing is, why didn't you know? He was an employee of yours.
Well, then by that, why aren't we then having that same approach with Brad Underwood? Because he was actually the head coach at the time.
But there's no thing. Don't think Underwood's home free either on this thing. This is a slow process, okay? Yeah. And if you want to connect dots, there's a dot with Brad Underwood's name on it. Now, whether they choose to omit that dot and not go to Illinois and say, but there's no reason to think they haven't been in touch with Underwood either. I mean, this has been an exhaustive effort on both ends. And I'm sure that the committee feels like, with the information that they have on Oklahoma State, I'm sure they feel like this was the right punishment. Now, OSU has the ability and the will to show this is not the right thing, and we're going to fight this as much as we can. You heard that from Jeff Long. You heard that from Bill Self when that came out of Kansas. We're going to fight this vigorously. There's a lot of fighting goes on, when you're accused of things. But as I told Kyle, we made our best pitch in February. I mean, I don't know how much more you can come up with other than this is totally unfair.
Well, Kyle brought up a good point. I mean, because Oklahoma State did a lot of that, helping out the NCAA, right, in the investigation.
Well, yes,
with the idea behind it of we do this and we're going to be okay when it all comes down, because they're going to look back and say we were compliant, we helped with everything. Unlike, like you said, Kansas, for instance, that's deny. So when this punishment comes down, even though they were helpful and compliant, what does that tell other schools when they see this, with the ones that denied, for instance?
What does it tell the people within your department? Like I said, there was division in the department when I was there in football.
Yeah.
And I'm still raising my hand all these years later. When I had the conference, around the conference table, and it was told as a unit, we're going to cooperate. I said, why should we give the NCAA investigators 6 files and make it easy for them? If you think you got something on us, get in there and find it. You're on your own. And we complied, and we helped them in '88. And I shudder to think what would happen if we didn't, I guess. We might not even have football now. They might have just done away with it. So, I mean, I can't speak to what was going on in the department now. You would think the first impression would be to help. We got nothing to hide. We're going to show you everything we got. It was stunning. I mean, to be honest with you, the postseason was stunning. The rest of it, I probably I don't know if I would have accepted it, but I would have expected some of that.
And Jason, I want
a lot of it was already self-imposed.
Yeah,
anyway.
it was. And that's why we did that,
right?
Figuring there's the cooperation. We self-imposed. We're going to fine ourselves. We're going to cut visits. We're going to cut this, cut that, and maybe that will appease. And so, look, we know what was wrong. We weren't responsible, but we're trying to make it good.
Yeah.
So that's what we did.
And along the lines of those self-imposed ones, it's not like they said, okay, you said 2 weeks, but we actually think it should be 7 weeks. It was you said 2, okay, we'll add 1 more.
Yeah. Well, and then I want to know you guys if you agree with this maybe, but would it have made more sense, to me it would, to put that postseason ban if they had proof that, for instance, Holder was a part of this or that Boynton was a part of this. But with it being the outside party at this point,
it's because I think it was Holder who mentioned it during the press conference that essentially there's a guideline for these committees, and because it was a level 1,
the complaint was level 1 against Lamont Edwards.
Right.
Yes.
And that's the complaint. And OSU agreed to that.
It wasn't necessarily a level 1 punishment. It wasn't a level 1 getting in the way of things. It was level 1 allegation, accusation. That was the level 1 against Lamont Evans. But that doesn't mean it's a level 1 overall punishment. Right. But I heard that part.
Right.
Now, if you just are going to slot wrongdoings.
Exactly.
And that's what they did. Okay, well, they slotted it up to number 1. So that's where they are. Frankly, the people in the department felt like at the worst case scenario, we get a level 2. Now, a level 2 is not something you go bragging at home about. I mean, you're still paying a price. You're still being punished. You're still having to pay a little bit to the piper here. You don't have postseason, but there'll be scholarship stuff. There'll be the embarrassment of being in the news. But they felt like that might have been the worst case scenario. Some were hoping it was just nothing, level 3, and there's a little slap on the wrist, and we'll see you.
Now, are you on the side of Boynton? Because I know you are one of those people that, I mean, you feel that at times student athletes are supposed to be protected by the NCAA.
Well, that's what they say. Yeah,
that's what they say. So, do you side with Boynton because ultimately at the end of it, he kind of made it more broad of not just should my guys not be penalized, the guys who had nothing involved with this, but future programs, future generations. Why are we penalizing, from the NCAA standpoint, guys who were freshmen or in middle school when Lamont Evans did that?
Well, let me answer that question for you. The collateral damage thing is talk to Kyle. That's one of the things that comes up all the time. History repeats itself. And the other thing about do you cooperate, do you not cooperate? That repeated itself. This is the thing that repeats itself. And I have always been I've had some heated discussions with some of my compliance friends about this. Not this situation, any situation. If you're going to levy a punishment on a school for something that happened 2 years prior to the kids that are already there, you're not punishing the people who did the wrongdoing. Coaches are gone, players are gone for the most part. You're punishing the kids who had nothing to do with it. And that's always been my contention. But I've always been told they're part of the university. University is being punished.
There has to be a better way.
And I know Boynton wasn't, he didn't want to have the discussion right now because I think he's still kind of reeling from everything. But why don't you say, if you want to do something like that, why don't you say, okay, OSU, instead of banning you from the postseason, if you make it to the postseason, all the money you would have gotten from the NCAA, you have to return to the NCAA, because then you're penalizing just the university from the proceeds that they would have gotten from that postseason, but not penalizing the players themselves.
I don't think Boynton made it sound this way, but it came across this way. Mike Boynton, this has been going on. This argument has been made for decades. Decades. And so it's not just come up because it's Oklahoma State's kids being, quote, punished. This has been an argument forever, and I still don't understand how you can do that to kids who had nothing to do with whatever wrongdoing that you're pointing out.
Yeah.
And the people who were part of the wrongdoing either were fired, left, or are no longer on your campus. That's not right.
And I'm glad you said collateral damage, because that's the word that I thought of, because the spokesperson for that committee was actually asked about that. And literally his response was, well, we know there's going to be innocent people involved, but nothing we can do about it.
Yeah,
and it's
yeah,
like,
that was the answer.
What?
That's
when I heard that, that's when I go, NCAA does not care about the student athletes.
Yeah, that's
at
where,
that point when you are willing to say
that's where you say something has to happen for that.
Who can make that happen, though? If Oklahoma State doesn't like it, Kansas doesn't like it, Baylor doesn't like it, UCLA, that's where it gets done. These are not, and you gotta separate your emotion here. These are not 8 people that they just brought in off the street that are administering all this.
Yeah, right. But part of the problem is a lot of those are lawyers, and they look at, okay, we've got to look at this guideline, and this is how we have to base this ruling off of.
Sometimes that's good.
Sometimes it's good, but sometimes we not also want a personal aspect, a person, not a machine. That's the reason we got rid of the BCS bowls and we went to people picking. It's because we wanted people who could actually have an opinion to make those important decisions.
Well, you're preaching to the choir. I mean, I've always felt that way.
Yeah.
And I don't know why. Believe me, these discussions were being made and being had 70s, 80s, long before Boynton ever came along.
That's why this one reminds me.
But yet we've done nothing about it.
This one reminds me specifically of what happened with Mizzou, not because of the same thing, but because of the ones that were punished had nothing to do with it. And that can't continue to happen. Like I said, there has to be a better way.
Well, you would think.
There has to.
But it hasn't never come up.
Yeah.
And there's been a lot of people who have been in positions in the NCAA body, student body, if you will, who could have made that happen. But obviously nothing's been done because we're still punishing innocent people.
Well, as you've said in the past, ultimately it's going to come down to if something like that's going to change, it's going to have to come from the members. It's going to have to be the presidents from Oklahoma State, Kansas, from Power 5 schools who come together and say this needs to change.
Well, they got 5 trillion rules in the rule book that I used to get put on my desk every year. Well, why not add one more?
Well, and if it comes out,
this is not true, that we don't do it this way anymore.
If it comes out that they've attempted to do this or do attempt and nothing happens, then go. It's time to separate. And then people have been calling for that for a lot of years for different reasons. Why not now?
And I've heard that. I heard that coming in on another station. It's time to get out of the NCAA. But stop and think, though. If you get your Power 5 people who are not happy with what's going on in the NCAA, do you think you're going to have equal voice in a Power 5 community? You're going to have a hierarchy in the Power 5 that will be making rules for the other people in the Power 5. So you're not going to gain anything, in my opinion, by getting out of the NCAA because you're not going to have an equal voice when you join a Power 5, whatever it is, community, conference, whatever you want to call it. There's going to be a hierarchy, and they're going to be decision makers who make decisions for you.
Yeah. When we come back, we're going to detail more of all the penalties that are involved in this, and we'll talk much more about everything else surrounding this news that has come out of the NCAA today regarding Oklahoma State basketball. All still to come here on the Afternoon Sports Drive.
I don't want to wait for our life to be over. You have it, but you take it how you left it. This is getting paid. Take your time, take me under. I want it, but you show me what I'm missing. In the plane out of Southern California, running in the streets all day. I guess some of us just gotta learn the hard way. Don't give a damn, nobody gotta say we sell it now. I don't wanna wait.
Welcome back to the Afternoon Sports Drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network, 105.1, 93.1 FM, here in Stillwater, Triple Play Sports Radio app, wherever you may be, as Oklahoma State has made national news, unfortunately, for the wrong reasons, and we keep talking about that today. You guys want to hear, though, you want to hear my new favorite bump that has been created?
I have to admit, I heard it. I think it's pretty good.
I actually meant to...
bump or hot button?
Well, hot button, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, actually, it's not a bump, it's a hot button, yeah. But I was going to play it yesterday, and we were sitting in the dark, though, so I was a little predisposed at that time. So
and for a good portion, that computer wasn't working.
Exactly.
While we were sitting in the dark.
So this is my new favorite one, and I think I'm going to use it quite a bit whenever Tom tries to tell me something ridiculous.
No, Tom, the problem is...
Are you
we can't hear it because the mics are
Come on, Tom. Get off that crap,
You don't
Tom.
think
No, Tom, the problem is,
Three
are you
football
kidding
players
me,
have it.
Tom? Come on, Tom. Get off that crap.
You don't
Tom.
think
Come on, Tom.
Quit that crap.
that guy he's famous now. I mean, and he wouldn't wait for me to tell you. Did I sound like I was kidding?
I just thought we needed a little lighter note here with all the nonsense going on.
Hey, I'm the object of a lie. What was it? Tom, check your watch.
Tom, check your
He
watch.
used to do that for me.
My other one is when we have somebody on the phone. I don't know if Jason's heard this one either, but this is when we get somebody on the phone from now on.
I'm on the phone right now.
You like that one?
Yeah, you guys be hearing from my agent here soon.
Do we still have the Tom Duratio button?
Yeah, I think we do actually. I was looking through the hot buttons. There are a lot of Tom buttons on here.
I'm an easy target.
Yeah, here's the Tom Duratio one.
Join Tom Duratio.
I might have changed. Wow. If I had a choice, I might have changed it to that.
The funny thing is, when you contacted me about your USPS getting your paper to you a little late, when I was talking to my publisher because she needed your name and address to just jot it down, I spelled out your last name, and then I was like, wait, or is it TIO because it's Duratio? And I'm like, whoa, no, Jason.
You should have done that. See, you should have done that.
Oh, Tom Duratio.
Oh,
here with
Tommy
us.
D.
Just call me to dinner. That's all I care.
Hey, we want to make sure everyone does know, hey, phone lines are now open. We know we had Kyle on earlier, and we've been discussing. So if you have your own opinion, you got to blow off some steam about all this, as a lot of people have. Call in, 533-1051, 533-1020. We'll be happy to take your calls. Let's look at what is actually detailed out in the rules, because there are a lot of bullet points here. Unfortunately, that's not what you want to see. I'm counting. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 bullet points in this. 3 years probation, 2021 postseason ban, which we know, $10,000 fine plus the 1% of the men's basketball program self-imposed. Reduction of men's basketball scholarships by a total of 3 during the 2021, 2020, obviously the season, and through the 2022-23 academic years.
So that 3 years of 3?
Over 3 years there is what it's spread.
So it's cost them 9 scholarship?
Yeah. So, a total of 3. So it's spread over 3.
Yeah. Okay. So you don't have to use them all this year. You can do one every year, or something like that, or 2 in 1 year.
Yeah. A reduction of men's basketball official visits to 25 during the 2018-2019 rolling over into 2020 period. Self-imposed as well. Prohibition of men's basketball unofficial visits for 2 weeks during the fall of 2020 and 2 weeks during the fall of 2021, self-imposed. Prohibition of men's basketball telephone recruiting for a 1 week period during the 2020-21 academic year, self-imposed. University must prohibit telephone recruiting for 6 additional weeks during the probation period. Reduction in the number of men's basketball recruiting person days by 12, self-imposed. A 10-year show cause order for that former associate head coach, as we talked about. During that time, any NCAA member school employing him must restrict him from any athletically related duties, unless it shows cause why that should not apply. And then the last one, prohibition of men's basketball staff from participating in off-campus evaluations for 3 consecutive days during the summer evaluation periods in 2020, self-imposed.
Well, all those recruiting things, visits, and you can work around that. Phone calls, they're recruiting just like a whole lot of Power 5 schools are pretty orchestrated. So you don't want that, but at the same time, you can work around those things. When you get to the recruiting part, what you can't work around, and we'll go back to what we were talking with Kyle before, the longer the appeal takes, it's good for Smirt to say, and it's true, as soon as you file an appeal, everything stayed. It remains where it is right now. But what remains right now is that you still got all these punishments coming your way, excluding a appeal.
Mm-hmm.
The longer the appeal takes to be enacted, one way or the other, the more doubt and the more cloud that hangs over you. That is the worst part of an NCAA investigation. I don't care what sport you're in. Because if you don't get immediate resolution one way or the other, so you can get on down the road, there's that cloud of, well, what's going to happen to you? And don't think recruiters, they don't even have to be mean. All they got to do is say, Patrick, did you not hear? Yeah, that's tough about Oklahoma State. They made him go to a postseason.
Oh yeah.
And they're going to have to cut back on scholarships. Now I'm recruiting you, so now I sound better. So don't think that doesn't happen, and it will happen. It probably is already happening with kids that we're recruiting. because kids see and hear what they see and hear, and they might only hear or only see Oklahoma State. No postseason, that's all they see.
Well, imagine schools that are in competition trying to get kids not to go to Iona right now. Say, hey, you know what their coach did? Remember that in Louisville?
Iona's in a different thing because it's a small Catholic school, and they have a.
Yeah.
And I'm serious.
Well,
you're
right.
Yeah.
They have a different.
They're so clean.
Recruiting base. They have a different recruiting base to Iona as versus to a Power 5 school.
How is that going to work for Rick Pitino hiring
It's not
prostitutes
working right
for
now.
half the kids?
It's not working right now. I mean,
No.
That was the wrong
some
place
of the
to go.
schools, no pun intended, but fathers, in the school, in the clergy, they shook their head initially, like, what is this? What the AD thought was going to happen is you bring a guy like that in, and all of a sudden,
Program's
people
fixed.
forget about what
Yeah.
he did. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's a bad guy, but he'll be okay.
Oh, we need to forgive him. And yeah.
So
Everybody
look
makes
what
that
he's bringing
mistake.
here.
Yeah.
We can start playing all these big time schools, and that's what they see. But in this day and age, the Catholic Church has its own problems with the things that are going on. Now you bring in somebody like the Catholic school, and I can just tell you because when I heard that, I went back and read some of the comments that were made by those who donate to that school. They didn't want Rick Pitino there at all, and I'm not sure. When everything's said and done, he's going to be there because he's not a popular choice.
Oh, and that's an interesting thing I also brought up, since we're kind of talking about it in a way. It's obviously we're reading. Obviously, the OSU thing is what people are more focused in on, but 10-year show clause for Lamont Evans for what he did. But 3 years after Rick Pitino gets fired, he's back as a D1 head coach. How does that work?
Well, boy, that's a good question. Pitino seems to always stay one step ahead of the posse.
I think it's about the name. I mean, really. I think a lot of it has to do with
if
that.
you just looked at his past transgressions, you would think that nobody would take a chance on him. But I mean, where did what's his name? Art Briles. Where did he end up? Did he end up coaching again
At a high school for 1 year.
But still, though, I mean, so sometimes transgressions are overlooked when you need a coach.
But I'm also talking about from the NCAA standpoint. How is he being allowed from the NCAA standpoint to still be a Division I head coach?
The only difference I could see in that determination is, even though he was accused of it, and maybe it did happen, but they have proof that money changed hands with Lamont Evans. I don't know if all the insinuations did they have Pitino on tape getting literally getting money from somebody?
Well, but I mean, they already vacated their national championship. How can you vacate a national championship but not give a 10-year show clause?
I don't know. I mean,
by comparison,
you would think you'd give a lifetime show.
It's
clause,
almost like the NCAA justice system isn't fair or something weird.
Well, I'm not a big conspiracy guy. I mean, that's the easiest way to go. Well, they hate Oklahoma State. Well, no.
Yeah.
If you don't put yourself in that position, you don't put them in a position to hate you.
Yeah. Oh, and that's what I want to finish off the hour with this. Be careful with the conversation about KU and thinking that it means that it's going to be a death sentence for them. I haven't read the full story yet, but Kansas City Star is kind of reporting that the process that Kansas is taking is actually different from the infractions committee that OSU did. So there's actually speculation that because of the route that they're taking, they could actually be safer.
Well, I don't know the exact terminology.
I don't know how safe, but
there's two trails you can go down when answering the NCAA. You can go down the infractions committee trail, and then there's a model trail where you can go down and say, I didn't do this, this, and this, and this, and this. I don't know if that's what Kansas has done. I mean, they've been, quote, vigorously opposing whatever it was.
I guess KU's case is currently being considered by the new IARP.
Yeah. It's a model thing is what it is.
Right. So, and apparently in the story that Jesse Newell, again, we've had on the show before, he has a story where it explains how that new process could work if KU is accepted.
Okay.
And in each case, even though people don't want to hear this, each case is different. And we all sit in our little bubble saying, well, if we're doing this, how come this school didn't get? They don't look at it, and it's good they don't look at it that way, because someday you may be on the other side of that fence, and you wouldn't want to be broad rushed by the offenses of another school.
Yeah.
So it has to be independent of one another. And I've heard it, as you guys have heard many times. Oh, North Carolina, you know, they had all those academic. Well, nothing happened to them. Well, such is life. I mean, you worry about your own deal. If you don't get yourself in trouble, you don't have to worry about anybody else.
Hey, we'll discuss North Carolina here in a minute too, because I'm going to defend them and get roasted for it. But and then Kansas also, I'm going to tell you guys why I think they might be in less trouble when it all comes down to it. All still to come here on the afternoon sports drive, hour number 2 on the way.
She like my futuristic sounds in the new spaceship. Futuristic and Philip Cake.
Hour number 2 of the afternoon sports drive here on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Patrick Wheeler, Tom Dorado, and Jason Elmquist with you. We recruited Tom in for an extra day. I hope that's okay, Tom, but
well, you know,
circumstances dictate.
My retired schedule really was really turned upside down today.
Yeah, I know you were.
Because I've been out. My dog is the one you have to deal with because he wasn't happy. We were probably going to be throwing the ball around for an extra half hour, and now we're not.
Now I really feel bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. Here's the thing I want to say with all this regard. I know one of the biggest side topics has been brought up, but what's going to happen to Kansas now? Look what happened to Oklahoma State. What about Kansas? I remember when we talked about it the very first time it came up that they were notified of these 5 level 1 allegations. And I had said that the reason I thought at first that Kansas fought back so quickly and denied everything. Well, I really believe that Bill Self and that staff, I think they did a good job of cleaning up whatever was left behind. If they believe that there's not a lot of evidence that can be acted on here, which I think is the case, and they're as big a school as Kansas, and they're going to pull something like North Carolina did and spend up and towards $20 million in legal fees to get out of this, then they have the capability of doing that. But I don't know if that's still going to be the case when they see something that as much that didn't dictate as much of a punishment as was given in a lot of people's opinions here at Oklahoma State. It's like, oh my gosh, maybe a little bit now we're like, no matter what we do, like there's step 1 for the NCAA. Now here comes the NCAA after Kansas. We might be Kansas, and they love to see us in the tournament, and so does everybody else. But is the NCAA finally like, you know what, we gotta make sure
Kansas has not been punished yet. They don't have anything that they have to deal with. Oklahoma State has been punished, but it's not a final punishment. So I think everybody needs to kind of take a breath. It's what was sent down. This is what's going to happen, but you can appeal. And I think a good many of us think the appeal will, I think if you can get the postseason part of it lifted, even though you wouldn't be happy, you'd still be saying we weren't responsible for this, that, and everything else. But I think you can live with everything else.
Including the scholarship reduction?
Yeah, I mean, you won't like it. Would you like it? No. But at the same time,
if it meant no postseason ban, it's
the postseason
doable,
ban is the one that really
with this team.
You.
With this team,
and again, you don't know if this team will do anything. I mean,
you don't. But the chances, right, are
but
pretty
it has
elevated.
Implications that if they turn it in tomorrow and then next Wednesday the committee says, okay, we read it. No, it's still the same. Now this season that has so much potential, you may have to start taking roll to see who's here. Because, kids naturally would look at it and say, I didn't come here to just play regular season. Now I came here to go to the postseason and play for a championship, and now I can't do that. So that would have the implications. But I think the initial collateral damage is how long it takes between the time Oklahoma State appeals and the time it's enacted upon one way or the other. And if it goes 6-7 months, like some of these things do, the cloud of doubt hangs over you the whole time. And it can't be good for your recruiting, number one. It may not be good for your fan base if they're, I want to get excited, but what if tomorrow they come and say we can't, that kind of thing. So ticket sales may suffer. But the overall feeling in your department, I've been there. You kind of walk around like, man, I wish somebody would say something so we just know whatever it is and we get on down the road. And that's the collateral damage of what you got going right now.
Yeah, because that's the thing is because, again, conversation with Jordan Bishop earlier today, was like, what's the point of even playing the season if you're not going to get to play in the postseason? And again, I know you don't think that extreme, but that, for a 18-year-old who, whether it's Cade Cunningham or any of the other ones who may be here for more than 1 year, that's a valid question. Like, why do I come here, have to go to school, play basketball, knowing I'm going to have zero chance? Not hey, if we do well enough, we can get to the postseason. I'm going to have zero chance of winning a national championship.
Yeah, that question has to be asked, and it's running through all their minds. That's why when Boynton was asked about his conversation he had with Cade earlier, he said, well, fortunately it was short and didn't get to say everything I wanted to. But he also said that he plans on helping him explore every option and figure out what's best. And he
said for every player.
For every player. He even said whether that's the G League, whether that's another school. I mean, he was being completely honest with that.
Boynton's aware of all the options that are there.
Yeah.
And worst case scenario, this doesn't get lifted and it's the same, and it comes within a relatively short period of time. The way the NCAA is now, kids can appeal, say, I want to go someplace else, because when I came to Oklahoma State, I came under these pretenses, and now it's different. And in the way the NCAA is now, you can leave anytime you want to, and you don't have to worry about anything. So that would be an issue. There would be long-lasting damage, and there's going to be some already. I mean, again, depending on how long the appeal takes to be resolved, there's that damage that goes on of uncertainty. But you would have some real damage if it came out before the season began that, no, we heard your appeal and it's staying the way it is. Now you got kids going, coach, I don't know now.
Yeah, because that was actually asked during the press conference with the spokesperson from the committee, was about being able to get out of your letter of intent and stuff like that. And Kevin Feit actually corrected me, because I had originally said it was Section B of bylaw 14.7.2, which, funny enough, the committee person knew the exact bylaw, but he wasn't willing to go into any more detail.
Mm-hmm.
But it was it's in I said B, it's actually C according to Kevin Feit. But if a person basically it goes to an institution where you find out that that they're being levied postseason bans for stuff like what's going on here, they can be granted a waiver, an immediate waiver to play somewhere else. So it is for those who are asking and wondering, there is a bylaw to where anybody, and that's the thing, everyone's thinking Cade and whatnot, but anybody on this team right now could potentially say, I want, well, because even the grad transfer that Boynton brought up, because he brought him up specifically as well, saying, he came here with the expectations of, hey, this is my last chance to play. We have a good chance of getting to the postseason here. Well, you don't want him to quote Mike Boynton, I don't want these players to get screwed.
Right.
So he's going to help them if that's what they want to do.
And to me, that speaks to character of Mike Boynton.
Yeah, I don't think he would stand in their way. Obviously, he would try to talk them away from that.
Right, but he understands, too, and puts himself in those shoes.
But these would be you could say the first conversations he had with recruits are important, but given this, these are very important conversations he's going to have with these kids in the next 3, 4, 5 weeks, in that they've got questions, and he doesn't exactly have answers other than we didn't do anything, and this is not what we think is going to happen. But kids being kids, they want to know, and again, the NCAA, if you sneeze wrong someplace, you can ask to go someplace else and go.
Well, and the NCAA would, for Cade, for instance, would grant that. I mean, I would have to think they're not that dumb to keep him out of the NCAA other teams and playing this year to have his talent exposed.
Yeah, because if he wants to go somewhere else and play at college, they're not going to, because if they say no, well, then he's instantly going G League.
Well, and you and I
or Europe
we've talked about it, off air a little bit too. It's like, if he does, and Jordan, I saw it, Jordan Bishop tweeted about it earlier, if he ends up going to a Duke or a North Carolina or something, I mean, does the NCAA go, yeah, there we go. Mm-hmm.
What would that do to a guy like Likely, who's been around?
Exactly, yeah, I thought about that too earlier today.
He would have been eligible to go anyway.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't want to borrow trouble. We don't know if that's going to be the case.
No, right.
But
I think it's a question a lot of fans are worried about right now, and I'm sure, right, but I'm sure to an extent Boynton's also has to be worried about it, because
that's different.
He's because he as he said he had a short conversation because he wanted to make sure every single player knew before the news broke on social media. But he said that we're going to have multiple discussions over the coming days with every single guy, and because you don't know if you might feel good and have great conversations with him over the weekend, but you sleep on it, have a dream, or wake up one day and just your gut feelings like, man, I really want to play in the NCAA tournament. I don't think we have a chance. I'm going to go somewhere else. You never know. And
well,
that's
what makes it even worse is you cannot have a face-to-face with. You can have the Zoom thing.
Right.
But you can't have them in your office.
Yeah, it's
shut
the wrong
door,
time.
Right.
And say, the kid's coach and blah, blah, blah. And then you just look them in the eye and say, okay, this is going to happen. You can't do that to what is the 15th? Is that right, of July?
Well, July for the Big 12,
it's for the Big 12. Because drama is fun on the radio and entertaining.
I know that.
Before you get to your point, I was just going to say, I'd be curious if the Big 12 offers an olive branch of saying, hey, because NCAA says that basketball players can be on campus and do stuff. If Big 12 maybe has a slight amendment saying, okay, because of the current circumstances, you're allowed to have in-person conversations, but just about this.
Yeah,
I don't know if they could do something like that, but
they can do anything. But
basketball
I doubt
was
that they would.
July 6th, I believe, is when basketball players could come back. I think.
Yeah. It's not till July. I know that.
I think it's the 15th.
Well, that's for I think all the other athletes in the fall.
Maybe
basketball I believe is the 6th.
But these Zoom things can only you can only say so much there.
Right.
You want to, as a coach, you want to get the guy in your
yes,
room
you do.
Say,
in this situation,
okay,
absolutely. Yeah. For the drama aspect of it here, let me put you guys in Cade's situation. Okay, if it comes down and the punishment is final, and they say no postseason, do you go to the G League? Do you go to another school? Do you stay with Oklahoma State?
I have two stances here, kind of both extremes. Part of me would say go G League so the NCAA can't exploit you because obviously they don't have your best interests at heart anyway.
Right.
But the moment you are, you're blowing up ESPN like Zion, Trae Young, they're profiting from you. But then the other part of me says stick around, even knowing that you're not going to the postseason, and stick it to the NCAA by saying, I'm the best player you have in college basketball, and because of what you did, you're not going to have your best player in the postseason, as Bishop pointed out, for the second straight year.
Yeah, out of Memphis last season.
Well, I think he gave us an indication of what his answer would be when he came here, because he didn't have to come here. I mean, his brother was here. That was the big draw for him.
He could have guaranteed going to the postseason by going to a Duke or Kansas.
Or he could have just put his name in and gone play someplace else, go overseas and play, for a year. So I think the fact that he wanted to play here, I think that will play out. Now, I don't know him well enough to tell you one way or the other. Mm-hmm. And if tomorrow, which is not going to happen, but if tomorrow the NCAA committee says, we looked at your deal, you're still not playing in the postseason, that's too bad. Now, would that change his mind? Perhaps. But I do think he's committed to being here with his brother. He has a great relationship with Boynton. He truly wants to play here. I think he loves Oklahoma State as a potential here. So I'm if you're asking me, and I don't know him, but whatever I know right now, I would say I don't think that's going to change. Could he be tempted? Yeah, but I think he'd stay here.
Okay, interesting. If I were in the situation, it would be very tempting to go to the G League. I mean, seeing what the deals were for other people, for Jalen Green, for instance, and everyone, I'm like, I'm Cade Cunningham, and I'm just as good, if not better. I'm going to get some money. I'm going to be able to fast track my career to the NBA a little quicker maybe than I thought. So I think and again, to your point, also saying screw the NCAA. And you can also kind of say screw the NCAA by staying in there too.
Right.
But this way even more so. So I think...
Wouldn't he have done that, though, anyway, if he really wanted to go play?
We talked about that, and I would think that, because I've asked that question, I think, even on this show, is like, why didn't he? And we talked about, his brother. And
because I quote tweeted Jeff Goodman with Stadium, who said that a source told them that he was offered the similar or probably more money than Jalen Green was, and turned it down already.
Report from I brought up from Kyle today that he had said when the NBA scout had talked to him and told him you had said it the other day, in this year's draft he thinks he would have gone number 1. So that shows you he probably has some serious interest in playing for Oklahoma State and trying to bring a title there.
I mean, if he didn't make that jump initially, why would he do it now? I mean, I think he's locked into here. He and Boynton have a great relationship, and he feels like he can learn a lot here and make his game even better. His brother's here, which is a comforting thing for him. So I don't think he's going anywhere.
I can't buy into it fully that he would stick around with no postseason. I just can't. Because to me, that's goal number one and the only goal, I think, coming into a season.
You say yes from a competitor's viewpoint, yes. But from his viewpoint, I think he is going to make his mark and his future paycheck in 32 games, whatever he would play in the regular season.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think he desperately needs to play in the postseason to enhance his ability to be attractive. He's already the number one pick right now.
Yeah. This was the postseason would have just been for trying to make history at Oklahoma State, right?
Well, yeah, he hopefully he would.
Yeah,
but I don't think he would enhance his pro potential, but just because he was in the postseason.
Right. Let's go to the phone lines during the afternoon sports drive. Go ahead.
Yeah, question. You guys were talking about change of circumstances for recruits coming in or anybody on the team when they're denied postseason play. So theoretically, the whole team could leave. Are you saying that the NCAA would grant them they could all go on the portal? And I mean, I know it's crazy, but I mean, is that what could?
Yeah. So they could be granted one time. I think it is what they call one-time waivers to basically go to a different school.
Basically, it would be the death penalty.
Yeah, I mean, it could come down to being as bad as that. It's all going to depend on individually every single player. If they say, well, why would we not? And that's going to be the problem. What college kind of talk about too is we have to think of other players too besides Cade that say,
exactly.
I got to go.
Likely, and Cade,
right.
And some of those other high-ranking recruits.
You're right. It could affect everything on your roster when you get right down to it. But I would caution. Let's wait to see what happens. Okay. I mean, there's a lot of what ifs and what happens, and none of this is even on the table right now. Could it happen? Yeah, but these conversations Boynton's going to have with his players to kind of get them settled down and tell them what's going on are very important. And I don't think you're going to have a mass exodus. I really don't. I mean, even if we don't have postseason, the freshmen, for instance, are coming in. They still got, they've got 3 more years to go to postseason. Will they like it? Nobody's going to like it. Okay, nobody's going to like it. But I think that I'm not on the drama wagon and say everybody's going to leave.
Yeah,
I'm not that.
And caller, what you said there, that like what Tom just said, that would be worst case scenario Armageddon situation. Now, is it possible? Yes, but I think the possibility is probably pretty low at this moment.
Yeah.
Well, here's a more likely probability. You lose Cade and you lose Likely and maybe another freshman or two coming in highly rated, and then your team doesn't make the postseason anyway, maybe for 1 or 2 years, and you're losing 3 scholarships. So it might have a long-term effect where you're not going to the postseason because you're not good enough for 3 or 4 years because of what they've done.
Well, if it does happen that way, I just don't see you mentioned Cade. I've already said I don't think he's going anywhere anyhow. He's going to be here. Likely, I don't think he's going anywhere. He had a chance to go anyway, and he didn't go. So
things are different now.
Well, they aren't different yet. I mean, until we're told that this is going to be the case, it's not different yet. Right now, it's the same as it was before this ever started. I mean, last year, nothing's changed.
Let me switch gears and ask you something because of where we are in the world right at this moment. Are any of the individuals on the committee that handed this down, are any of them black?
I have no idea.
Not sure. Couldn't tell you.
I have no idea.
Boynton's team is all black except for one player, including those coming in, and he himself black and another assistant or so. And so, I mean, you could, I know it's probably a stretch, but why are you punishing these guys? It's not probably not because of their color, but a lot of these things, get way out of proportion. So I mean, it's just an interesting thing.
I don't think that has anything to do with it.
I would say
I know it doesn't, but you know how people.
Yeah, well, people need to think.
Yeah,
people need to think with a little conviction here, and think with a clear head. These people, while I don't know them, I can't tell you every one of them. I can't even tell you the names of any of them, but they are learned people in the college athletics field. They're not on this committee because they needed 8 people to come in off the street and sit down. That's not where they are. These people have backgrounds, and they understand the severity of punishment that they send out.
Yeah, I think only one of them didn't have a university sports background.
Right.
But he was still a lawyer, essentially, I think is what it was.
Here's what they understand, Tom. They understand they want to punish the institution. They could give a rip about the players. And the fact that a lot of these guys are black and don't have the wherewithal, where they're coming from. They're trying to elevate themselves, get an education, blah, blah, blah. Their God-given ability to play, maybe give them a way out. And now that's squashed like a little bug. So don't give me that the NCAA is, all they care about is punishing institutions. They don't give a rip about the individual players.
Well, I would hope that's not the case, and I don't know where you're coming from on that.
Why would they? I mean, like you said, these guys were in 8th and 9th grade.
Well, I've always felt like that's the case, but I wouldn't go. I mean, I wouldn't go completely down the road with you on that. I'm not going to sit here and say that these people are trying to punish black athletes and things. That's not even in their mindset. Might it turn out to be that way? I could. But at the same time, I don't think they went into this thing with that thing in mind, or I'm going to punish Oklahoma State because I want to make the black coaching staff and the black players have to feel this. I'm not going to go there.
Yeah. Caller, race has nothing to do with it. I can guarantee you that. And also,
Al Sharpton, I believe that's what, just like you. I agree with you there. But people like Al Sharpton and others, they would jump on it.
Yeah, there will be people, and I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, the time we're in right now with everything going on, but to me, that's one of the most ignorant ways that you could go about this.
I wouldn't waste my ear on that.
All right. Bad news anyway.
Yes, sir. Thanks for the call.
You.
Yeah. When he brought up that situation of, we got to get to a break here real quick, but brought up that situation of, is it possible that all of them could leave? Yes.
Yeah, I guess.
I mean, there's really nothing you can throw out of the window right now. So it's definitely a possibility, but it's important to remember, like you said, Tom, that this isn't definite, but we can all have our own opinions what the appeal is going to be. I'm not, and I wouldn't lie on here. I'm not extremely confident about what it's going to be. I'll say that, to be honest, because I know
with the NCAA.
I know how the NCAA is, and they're not a fair institution. Okay, we'll say that. We'll come back. We'll be back to the phone lines and everything as well here on the Afternoon Sports Drive right after this.
It's been a too long time with no peace of mind. I'm ready for the times to get better. I've got to tell you, I've been racking my brain, hoping to find a way out.
Welcome back to the Afternoon Sports Drive. Wow, that couldn't be a more fitting bumper song. Ready for the times to get better. Cody Jinks. How fitting is that?
Ready for 2020 to get better.
Ready for 2020 to be over.
Man.
Let's go to the phone lines. Caller, you're on the Afternoon Sports Drive. Are you also ready for 2020 to be over?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, especially now.
Yeah, exactly.
But, hey, I just want to get you guys' opinion, man. It always seems like the NCAA has an axe to grind with us. It seems like anytime we're on the block, they stick it to us. And I know in the past the athletic department hasn't been much on appeals, like they just taken it. Is this one they're going to turn around and appeal? Have you guys heard anything on that?
Yeah, they're going to appeal it and vigorously and deny everything that was in there. But they've already made this appeal, if you will. They've been going on this for a couple, for the better part of a year and going through everything that they were alleged to have done and came right back and said, we didn't do this, we didn't do this, we didn't do this. And the final time they did it was a couple of months ago, and then lo and behold, a couple of months later, now comes out the punishment. So I mean, nobody knows how these things are interpreted. But yes, to answer your question, they're going to vigorously appeal it, and they hope they can get some of that changed.
Yeah, their statement was they will appeal immediately. So it's going to be as soon as possible. They had until the 20th to do so.
Yeah, 15 days to,
Okay, because Tom, and correct me if I'm wrong, but in the past, we kind of laid back and taken whatever they dished out, right?
Well, I don't remember too many of them. I mean, we vigorously went after them in '88 football.
And I'm thinking about Hartley Dykes on the football thing. It seems like we took that one on.
But you know what? I hate to speak out of school, so I guess I'm not literally, but there wasn't much we could appeal on that one. We were pretty much caught on that one. So there wasn't much we could do with that one.
It seems like they really stuck it to us. Do you think they'll do the same with Kansas? I can't even see Kansas. It seems like on the Blue Bloods they give them a pass on stuff like this.
But I don't know.
Is this something that they're...
I don't know if that's true or not. I mean, I'm not a conspiracy guy. I think each case is different. Each school is different. And my contention is always, if you don't want to be in that classroom, then don't do anything wrong, and you won't be there. So you leave yourself a lot of room for interpretation when there's a wrongdoing and you call before the principal, and the principal is going to declare one way or the other what he thinks of you. So I don't get into that. Whatever happens in Kansas, I really don't care. Whatever happens there. The only thing I care about is somehow this punishment gets lessened in the appeal.
Well, it's like we talked about when Kyle Boone was on the show to start off. Would anybody be surprised if Kansas comes away unharmed or less of a harm than Oklahoma State? I wouldn't. I wouldn't be surprised. I don't think a lot of people would. You say you do. I don't think so.
They'll get something out of it. Now, they're going to get automatically Bill Self's gone and his whole staff's gone, and they're going to have 10 years probation. They're not going to get that.
No, but we'll say this, that if the 5 level 1s are true and they're proven, that has to be a multiple year postseason ban at least.
Depends on the committee's interpretation of what they are. Because Kansas is going to flood them if they haven't already with evidence that they didn't, quote unquote, do any of this. So it'll come down to, did you or didn't you?
But caller, to your point, it is easy to go out and say, and even maybe justify at some point, that the NCAA does have something maybe against Oklahoma State at some point. I mean, it's easy to see that.
It just seems that way over the years. Anyway, well, thanks, gentlemen. You guys have a great day.
Yeah, you too.
Thanks for the call. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to sound like I'm taking the easy way out saying the NCAA just hates Oklahoma State, but after a certain period of time, you're like, come on now. Well, what really is the reasoning behind something like this? The punishment being as swift and as severe as it was. I don't really understand that.
I don't know if it was swift.
Well, I mean, like, I guess I would say that by happening as it did all at one time here with the amount that it happened as well. Let's go back to the phone line. You're on the Afternoon Sports Drive. Go ahead.
Well, guys, I figured since you were using my last call as part of your show, I'd call in.
Hey, thanks for giving us that bite. I really appreciate it.
You probably want a check or something. No, you want some money on this deal.
Oh, no, I don't want any royalties, Tom. Not a penny. Hey, quick question here. Everybody talks about Lamont Evans, and what he did. And people don't realize what a rookie ball person Lamont Evans was. I mean, Tom, I've been around it a while, too. Tell us who Willie Anderson was, Tom.
Yeah, that's a good... Yeah, Willie was a well-liked person, and I still like Willie and see him from time to time, but Willie was right in the middle. The last time I heard, and he may still be in Stillwater, okay? And I don't know that for a fact, I have to tell you. But Willie was right there in the middle of the wrongdoing, and he admitted it. And, he got a little overzealous in his recruiting, if you will.
Well, I'll tell you what, this hammer they put down on us today, if you can't find a way to appeal that and get a reduction in that, don't we keep a law firm on retainer as the university?
Well, Chuck Smirt is our guy, and he's a former NCAA investigator. He worked for the NCAA, and Chuck's been around for several. He was with the Sports Illustrated thing.
That's what I thought, yeah.
And Chuck is a very learned guy, and he's a good guy to have in your corner. And he'll lead this appeals charge, if you will. And hopefully we can get some of this stuff trimmed off in the final analysis here.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong. Correct me, but does with the appeals process that we're starting, that stops the penalties cold until all that's through, right?
That is correct. Yes, it's a stayed situation where, whatever happened this morning is now on hold. It's you're appealing, and it will not be final until the appeal is ruled upon whenever. And that's always the question: when will it be appealed?
And I think we also want to just make sure that we point out that according to Chuck Smirt, is you don't necessarily appeal everything.
Right,
you appeal specific penalties.
Yes.
Right.
So
the postseason ban.
Right. So they could say, hey, we're just going to appeal that, and everything else they uphold.
That is correct.
Well, I don't believe for a second that Kansas is going to get any more than a one-season postseason ban.
Yeah, and I mean to that,
I don't believe that.
Yeah,
I don't believe that for a minute.
No, I've said I wouldn't be surprised. I just wouldn't. And that's unfortunate because, again, if it comes out true that obviously what they did really actually did give them a competitive advantage, then they should be much more severely punished.
I don't know. I don't get it. It's like we're the whipping boys. I mean, would you agree with that? I mean, we are the whipping boys.
Well, let's put it this way. We've come up on the short end of some of these NCAA situations, to be sure. But you've heard me say this before. If you don't want to be in the principal's office, don't do anything wrong. And then you won't have to go to the office to take your punishment.
I mean, in football, we were dang near the whipping. Well, we were the whipping boys.
In 88?
Back in 88, 89.
You're right. That was a severe penalty. Severe penalty.
It was the second worst in all of history, wasn't it?
That is correct.
Football?
Yeah, second to SMU. But we had some major transgressions, however, during that time.
Oh, no, we did.
Yeah.
Oh, no, we deserved the hammer, Tom, but everybody deserved the hammer at that time.
Back at that,
I mean,
were right.
If you watch the documentary on Eric Dickerson, right?
Right. Yes, I did.
I mean, they were calling Texas A&M Texas Trans Am University.
Yeah. That was the Wild Wild West back in those days, for sure.
It was.
No.
But that's college basketball now.
Well, to some extent, you're right.
College football. No, I'm just saying what college football was back in the 80s across the Southeast, Southwest, and the Big 8. You've got that now.
Well,
college basketball.
And hopefully they can get that under control. I think they've tried to with this effort, starting with the FBI and all the wiretaps and all that. And we'll only know down the line whether they did it or not. I don't think it's as wild and woolly as it was prior to all these investigations, but I'm not naive enough to think it's still not going on, though.
Well, let me give you a theory here, guys. The NCAA is laying the hammer down here because they're afraid of the feds. Is that a case? Is that a possibility?
Well, they work with the feds in conjunction with them.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that was the process the whole time. The feds went through their deal, put people on trial, brought in evidence to the courtroom, had federal judges, came up with decisions, and the NCAA was just marking time with them. They were working with them, and they were well aware of what was going on in each case. So when it was determined on the federal level, then they took over from there.
Yeah.
Well, does it seem like Lamont Evans getting off kind of easy here? I mean, I know he got some Fed time, very little.
I don't know.
But, I mean, isn't Lamont Evans kind of skating here?
Well,
compared to what he was originally supposed to get,
it sounds pretty good. It could compare to what was thrown out originally. Yeah.
I mean, I know he's got to show cause as part of this, but quite honestly, Lamont Evans kind of skated here. Yeah. I mean, he's leaving people in the dirt, and we're the dirt.
Well, it's an unfortunate thing for everybody all the way around. I mean, Lamont was a likable fella, but obviously his decision-making left a lot to be desired, and his decision-making affected everybody else down the line.
And then you got these schools who, I mean, I can understand lowering the boom on a school if you're paying recruits to come to your school.
Yeah.
But when you've got a guy who's going into his senior year, and it's a case about somebody wanting to be a street agent, I mean, I don't understand that.
Yeah. Well, and that's kind of what we've been talking about, why the punishment was too severe, for this situation, because I never thought that there was and this has been admitted by the NCAA, clear competitive advantage given with this situation. So this punishment seems like, if there had been, or had players been added to a roster here, for instance, what have you, in illegal ways, then this punishment would make a lot more sense.
And the saddest part is, the most frustrating part is about all of this is you're going to appeal, but you're going to probably get shot dead.
Well,
and this is.
I don't know if that's I don't know if that's for sure.
Right here.
I don't know if we could say that. I mean, we got some good people on this end. They're going to make that appeal, and they're going to bring everything they've got to get it reduced. And I think they're going to get their. Oklahoma State's going to give its best shot on this thing. Now, how the appeals people will take that shot, I have no clue. I mean, I'm not in on that end, but if it doesn't change, it won't be because Oklahoma State didn't give it its, go the extra mile to make sure they got it reduced.
What kind of legal team are they, Tom?
I'm sorry.
We've got?
Excuse me.
What kind of legal team are they that we have?
Well, Chuck Smart kind of leads it up from that end. He's got his own agency, and we work with them on various things. And Chuck's, like I said, he's a learned fella, and he knows his way around the NCAA and the NCAA committee. So I feel very comfortable that Chuck will find every possible way to get this taken care of.
Okay, I just, like I say, the only reason I say it's program killer is we were set up for a heck of a go here.
And we still are. We still are as we talk.
For the moment, we still are. Yeah, we'll just have to see what comes from the appeal.
Well, how are we still are? I mean,
because nothing's changed. Nothing's changed. We're like we were before all this came out. And it will not be final one way or the other till the appeal's over. So if we were starting to play tomorrow, basketball, which we're not, but we didn't have players on campus. But if the season started tomorrow, we'd be off and running just like nothing had happened.
Do you expect everybody to still show?
Yeah, I do. I do for the most part. I do. Yeah. Huh.
Do you think most of the recruiting class will still show up?
I think so. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thanks, guys.
Yeah,
right,
thanks
sir.
for the call.
Thank you.
If you want to get in on the conversation, we got to hit our break here. When we come back, we'll have one more segment for everybody to get in, give their opinions. 533-1051, 533-1020, as we continue on here with Oklahoma State and the ramifications coming from penalties handed down by the NCAA for the basketball team. All that's still to come here on the Afternoon Sports Drive.
Yeah, that's what I've been on. Yeah, that's what I've been on. Yeah, that's what I've been on. Yeah, that's what.
Welcome back to the Afternoon Sports Drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Patrick Wheeler, Jason Elmquist, and Tom Dorado with you. It has been a very busy day. Unfortunate circumstances so far here regarding that. Let's go back to the phone lines.
We haven't even gotten to talk about other
we have. This has been...
Because I just want to throw it out. Apparently, Jordan and Jordan Brand announced that they're going to donate $100 million over the next 10 years to help the cause going on right now.
$100 million. Yeah. Wow. Very well done.
That's a lot of money.
Let's go to the phone lines. You're on the Afternoon Sports Drive. Go ahead.
Hey, guys, I've been unable to listen all day, but I just heard that there's been something that has happened, and I'm very not in tune with what's happened. Could you go from A to Z and say what has happened in a very short way of saying it without boring everybody else, but letting me know what has happened, and I'll take it off the air?
Okay, I'll let Patrick go to A to Z, but and we can summarize it after that.
For anyone, I know there has been people that still haven't heard the news like that caller that are busy during the day, whatever. Oklahoma State was officially announced with the NCAA today that they have received penalties regarding incidents that took place in 2017 with Lamont Evans. He was, what was the money? I think it was between up to $22,000 that he received for getting players to go to certain places. Oklahoma State, he was a part of Oklahoma State when he was there when all that happened. So the penalties include right now a 2020-2021, this upcoming season, postseason ban for Oklahoma State basketball, as well as 3 years of probation for men's basketball, a loss of 3 scholarships over 3 more years as well. There's a bunch of recruiting stuff that's going to be impacted as well, which we talked about earlier in the show. But those are the 3 main ones, the nutshell right there, that what's going on with Oklahoma State. And they have appealed this, which will take up to, I mean, it could take up to 120 days. Is that what they said, to have that come out before it's,
so is what I've heard,
before the final decision? I mean, it probably, I would be surprised.
From when they
from when
initiate
they
the appeal, and they have 15 days from today, and they've already said they're going to.
Yes.
But we also need to clarify that talking with Holder today, he said that there's still a lot of people that he needs to sit down and talk to figure out.
Yeah.
Because again, they can go after all of the penalties and appeal all of them, or they can settle for just one. You know, obviously the postseason ban is probably going to be at the top of their list, but you know, he said there's a lot of people that he still needs to talk to. I'm sure Burns Hargis is probably one of those people as well. So you know, they may not actually officially submit their appeal until next week or week after, but they have 15 days from today to get that appeal in.
I'll let Tom talk more about it here too. Just the final thing is to make it clear, the university has said in their statement they completely disagree with all of these punishments as well, and that's why they're immediately going after this appeal.
And I would say, being around here for 100 years, that may be one of the more aggressive statements I've ever heard from the university itself or from the athletic department. And I thought Holder and Boynton, Holder probably because he was the lead on it, he was pretty aggressive in his first statement.
Oh, yeah.
And he stayed with it, that we feel like we're wronged. I think he used the word victim. I think was he the one who did that. And they didn't waver. Nobody wavered from their stance that this is something we will fight vigorously, and we don't think it's right. So they're all behind this, and you're right. Burns Hargis and the legal team at the university they'll certainly be in concert with what goes on. But I feel certain, like I said, the NCAA Appeals Committee will be getting Oklahoma State's best shot, and I mean best, capitalize the B and the E and the S and D, the best shot that Oklahoma State can give them. And then how that works out, who knows?
Yeah, they will go down swinging, if they go down. I mean, it's going to be a fight till the end. I think they've made that clear. And that was one of the things that was brought up immediately on Robert's show when the news broke, was how disappointed people would be as Oklahoma State fans if they folded over and just took this punishment. I didn't think for a second that would be the case. I don't know about you guys, but they were going straight after it.
Because they were not expecting this.
Yeah.
They were expecting something along the lines of what they self-imposed, and maybe just a tad more. They would have been able to handle it. They wouldn't have liked it. But the postseason ban was enough. That put everybody on alert and on target and on point that this is not. We're not going to accept it.
Yeah,
we're not going to take this at all.
And aside from Holder, which obviously a lot of OSU fans want to hear, I think another one we need to keep in mind and share is Chuck Smirt. I mean, throughout, he's a lawyer. He was pretty kind of calm with most of what he was said. It was just kind of generalizing things, but at the end, he essentially said that the penalty is not justified. Like, he straight up said, he was kind of on the edge, never really seemed to commit necessarily to most questions. But then when it came to the appeal stuff, he was like, he's like, this should be a slam dunk. The penalty issued is not justified based on the violation from the university standpoint.
And he's right when he says that about the appeal, that this should be a slam dunk in terms of, I would think, at least with the postseason ban. But every time I say that and I want to convince myself and more people, I'm just like, we've seen how the NCAA acts in these situations.
Like I said, that's why I think it's going to come down to who's on that appeals committee,
absolutely,
and who looks at it and understands, okay, we're penalizing the university, even though the university didn't gain anything, they didn't gain an advantage, they didn't do anything involved. The person that was involved is being brought to NCAA justice with this 10-year show clause.
Let's go back to the phones. Caller, you're on the afternoon sports drive.
this is kind of a what-if question. Say Cade Cunningham does come to OSU and he's good as advertised. How does the NCAA respond after they've announced the brackets for the tournament next spring and they're asking, well, you shut out one of the best players in the country?
Their first response, I think, would be, well, he did something wrong. I mean, when we went up and he didn't do something wrong. He's a part of a team that did something wrong, and we had to punish it. And that's the thing too, is that they would also say by that time, he had the decision also to not be a part of Oklahoma State anymore. Would you agree with that, Tom?
Yeah, and I guess I lost the caller. I lost your track there. You're saying if they get to the tournament, Oklahoma State gets to the tournament, and they're eligible to play, that they would. What did you say about Cunningham? They would keep him from playing? Is that what you said?
Say he comes to OSU and he's as good as advertised, All-American.
Right.
caliber.
Okay.
Next spring, NCAA announced brackets at OSU is because of probation not in them. Now, when sports broadcasters like yourselves are asking questions about the tournament and ask, well, you've shut one of the best players out of the tournament, with Oklahoma State. How do they respond to that?
Well, if it came down to the ruling in the spring, and I guess I'm not following you close enough. If they ruled in the spring that they upheld the punishment and Oklahoma State can't go to the postseason, then they're not going, Cade Cunningham or not. But if they qualified to go, then Cade Cunningham's going with it. I mean, Oklahoma State's going to have to have a good enough year to go there, but I don't see what the correlation would be. I guess I'm missing your point.
I think what you're talking about too is
well, I'm just looking as a PR mark against the NCAA for how do they
hey, to answer, to answer kind of what you're asking there, I think, for instance, if Cade Cunningham sticks with Oklahoma State and this decision comes by, we looked at the numbers and it would be somewhere in September. It would be the latest that it would come back on the appeal. So if the appeal comes back and they say, well, yeah, it's upheld, you're not going to have an NCAA tournament appearance this year no matter what, and he sticks with Oklahoma State and has a hell of a year, plays great, and Oklahoma State plays great, then the NCAA, they know with that risk going in, well, we may have the number one player in the country here not be showcased in our biggest tournament. So from a PR standpoint, like you're talking about, yeah, that's a big hit for Oklahoma State. That's why I think
now you're getting my point.
Yeah, that's why I think Oklahoma State would be, or the NCAA, I should say, would actually be thrilled to find out that he decided to transfer and go to a different school or get out of there. That has a chance to make the tournament.
Yeah, we would be making the assumption that he was going to stay after September if it came out.
Right. That
he would still be at Oklahoma State. I'm not a big conspiracy guy. I don't think the NCAA is going to care one way or the other whether he's there or not. They have a precedence of not having the number one player in the country not in the tournament. So I don't think Cade Cunningham would come into their thought process one way or the other.
Well, yeah, I know that, but if that, like I said, this was a what-if question, but if that did play out, there wouldn't be question about it, I think.
Well, maybe, but again, I don't know that they would answer that question in any way. They probably wouldn't have to answer it. Would there be people who would think there was something to it? I don't know. But by that time, you'd know, right? You either stayed or he didn't if it came out in September. And if he stayed and didn't make it, so be it. I mean, that'd be it. If he went to another school and made it, then we wouldn't be talking about the same thing. But I don't think he's going anywhere. He's staying one way or the other.
Yeah. Can I change the subject real quick?
Yeah, we got just about a couple minutes left.
For a second.
Uh-huh.
I live at Newkirk, and there's a gentleman that lives here that spent at least a few years or several years growing up in Buckland, Kansas. That Eddie Sutton was a year or two ahead of him.
Yes. Uh-huh.
And, I've talked to him some, and he's told me a few stories. I don't know if he still has them, but he said at one time they had some film of Eddie shooting baskets at a poop hung on the side of the barn.
Probably.
And, I've just thought if somebody was doing a story on the life of Eddie Sutton, it would be worth the time to come talk to this guy.
Do you know his name again?
Yeah, I saw him a few days ago. I don't have his phone number or anything.
No, I said, do you know his name? What is his name?
His name is Leslie Leeming.
Doesn't ring a bell to you, Tom?
No, it doesn't, but he would be an interesting guest to have on, that's for sure, if we could do that.
Caller, we got to go. I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thanks for letting us know about that, and thanks for the call.
All right, thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, that's going to do it for us. The afternoon sports drive. I know that a lot of people are wanting answers. As much as we are.
And I don't know if you're going to get any answers. I think you need to just kind of sit back, let this play out. Now the process is going to be underway.
Yep, we're sitting on.
Don't be trying to figure out if this happens, if that happens. Let's just see what happens.
We're sitting on patience right now, unfortunately. That's going to do it for us. Afternoon sports drive. Thanks for everybody for calling in, listening. Hope everybody has a great weekend. Stay safe. And thanks to Jason Elmquist, Tom Dorado. Thank you to Kyle Boone and everyone else that called in. We appreciate it. The Afternoon Sports Drive here on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network. I'm Patrick Wheeler.